All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Study Skills Workshop. My name is Sophia, and I am a CNES peer mentor.
My name is Giannu, and I'm also a CNES peer mentor.
And today we will be discussing efficient ways to ace your science courses as a CNES student here at UCR.
Cool. So this is an overview of the topics that we'll be covering in this presentation. So general studying habits, different methods of learning, note-taking methods before and after a lecture, and different ways to tackle specific science courses that you may encounter during your first year or second year. So that's including the general chemistry series, the biology 20, Bio 5 series, as well as the math series.
All right, so we'll start off by going over some study habits. Generally, your freshman year is the best time to experiment with what works for you. The transition from high school to college classes can be challenging sometimes, but take this time to create effective habits that you can carry on throughout your time here at UCR. So first and most obvious is to attend class regularly. Professors often mention important information that doesn't directly go on the slides that they post. And it's also helpful to gain insight from other students' questions or even get your own questions answered during lecture. If you can't attend office hours, and before you think twice about skipping, tuition is expensive and a privilege. So get the most out of your education and the money that goes into it by attending. Next is to practice active listening. By doing so, you put yourself in a mindset to fully concentrate and understand the concepts in a way that allow you to remember what you've learned. This can be helpful for bio class, for example, where you have to understand a certain pathway and how each component contributes to it. Also, the best ways I've found to study is to supplement your learning by utilizing office hours or going to the Academic Resource Center. By attending office hours, you'll often have one-on-one and direct interaction with your professor or TAs to get your questions answered. This is also a great time to possibly network with them if you're interested in their research or maybe getting a letter of recommendation later on. And as for the ARC, they provide numerous ways of getting tutored, such as attending open SIs or other tutoring sessions, and you can find these up, on an updated schedule on their website. And lastly, study before and after your lectures, which we'll go over in future slides. I know we're all guilty of cramming, but imagine how much easier it can be to study when you've implemented this method all quarter. This can help with retaining information and making connections between lectures. And again, if you ever have any confusions, you will actually have time before your exams to clear up as opposed to cramming the night before.
So when it comes to studying, different people study differently and in different ways. So these are just a few different methods of learning, whether it be visual learning. If you're a visual learner, you're more inclined to better understand through pictures, videos, diagrams. So if this is you, definitely pay attention to what the professor projects on the board in the lecture notes. Or you could also be an audio learner. And if you identify with this learning method, definitely record the lecture if it is possible after gaining permission and listening out to your peers' question for additional insight, whether that be during the lecture or even during office hours. If you are more of a person who comprehends the material better through written text, you maybe identify with more of the read and write of the learning methods, and through using of words, it's best to perhaps refer to textbooks and other text materials that are supplemental to the course content and information. And you could also be a kinesthetic learner, and for this type of learning method, you are more interactive with the material. proactively answering questions, asking questions, or participating in clickers that will allow you to associate more of your actions to your learning. And definitely you may identify with one or you may identify with a couple, depending on the nature of the classes your learning methods can be different. And so once you find a way to solidify a learning method that works best for you for that particular course, you will then know you have no problem navigating how it is best for you to keep up with the material and to really integrate the information. And definitely keep in mind that some professors have different teaching styles, so your learning methods have to adjust and adapt.
All right, so before the quarter begins, of course, make sure you're prepared to tackle your courses. And some ways you can do that is to first set attainable goals for the quarter. That can be maybe raising your GPA, attending all of your classes, learning something new. And remember, the first step is to believe that you can achieve these goals. And by doing that, you can achieve anything. And so some ways to kind of map out your goals is to utilize the SMART Goals worksheet, which is a template some of you may come across in a learning community course, or maybe it can be found with a simple Google search. Next is to utilize a Google Calendar or planner to map out your important midterms or finals. You should also make note of office hours or SI sessions that you can attend in between your free blocks on campus. And by keeping this master calendar, you're able to manage all of your free time in terms of extracurriculars, work schedules, and even planning accordingly when studying for your exams in advance. And lastly, prepare all the necessary materials you might need, such as renting or buying textbooks, getting flashcards, notebooks, etc.
So in this next bit, we'll be covering a little bit more in depth on ways you can study or approach studying in relation to lecture material. So before the lecture, it is best if you are able to get familiarized with the concepts, as it is helpful to know what you'll be learning and getting into. So more often than not, professor usually provides materials to aid the lectures, whether it be lecture slides, assigned readings, additional texts. And if this is the case, do preview the material, annotate, highlight vocabularies that are standing out, and make note of what isn't really clear or confusing for you. And if there are readings attached to the material, we highly recommend you to do them. You don't have to read fully in depth, although it is preferable, but if you don't have the time, just previewing the concepts and the topics of the readings can be really insightful into the material that you'll be learning in lecture. And with this, you are more than welcome to also create a list of questions, and these may be answered during the lecture session. And with this, most of the time, it will just help to really clear up difficult concepts and learning and familiarizing yourself with certain diagrams as well.
Okay, so during lecture, it is critical that you limit all of your distractions. And by distractions, I mean your electronic devices. For myself, I tend to hide my phone in my bag or put it on Do Not Disturb until lecture is over. And during the lecture, I tend to forget it, but I'm definitely more engaged in active listening during the class, which is a plus. So again, during lecture, take this time to ask questions when allowed to, or even ask the professor to clarify a certain topic if you're lost. I'm sure most students are probably thinking the same thing but are too afraid to speak up. And with the notes and readings that you did before lecture, now you can easily draw those connections between what you have read beforehand. And this can be a great way to keep yourself on track um, with the lecture slides and the content that you're learning throughout the course. And also make sure to highlight any concepts that the professor indicated as important and relevant for the exam, or any other concepts that you may also have trouble grasping as well.
So after your lecture, take the initiative and the time to review what you just learned. So in other words, go over the slides and the notes that you have taken, and during this time you can actually make connections to your preview notes to your lecture, and then really consolidate it and make it and to prettify it essentially um, during this stage after the lecture. And if there's anything that still doesn't make sense, try to go to office hours, either the professor or the TA, as they are more than welcome to spend the time to clarify your questions and address the concerns that you have with information. And if the professor do assign practice problems, do them. So try to see if you can connect the lecture notes to the homework for the week. Are you able to fully solve any of the problems? Are you able to fully complete all of the questions? And this is a great way to put your content knowledge into its applications. And this is really the essential skills that goes to a majority of the courses that you'll be encountering. And so as lectures can be typically dense information, and it is very important for you to memorize certain concepts in order to apply them, try different creative outlets in using flashcards perhaps, such as Quizlets, right after each lecture so that you save yourself the time and the energy right before the midterm to do them. And so that way you will spend more time just reviewing the material more so than actually relearning the concepts.
Okay, so now that we've gone over the general ideas of how to successfully approach your courses, we will now go over specific classes you may come across as a CNAS student here at UCR, with some resources and tips that Jiyeon, and I have both utilized as well to do well in these courses.
So first up is the General Chem 1 series. And so for the nature of this course, if your professors provides the class with practice exams or midterm or practice midterms, take advantage of all of them and make sure you complete any of them that is given to you, as it is a great study tool. And if it is taken seriously, you are able to really determine how fast you're doing each problem, perhaps what concepts you're strong in, and what concepts that are more challenging, more troublesome for you. And being able to identify your strengths and weaknesses, that will also allow you to allocate and be able to balance the time and energy investment into really consolidating and understanding those concepts. And so in order to really make sure that you understand how to approach a variety of problems with general chemistry, it is essential to complete the practice homework and the homework problems that may be assigned to you. Doing this little each week will help you fulfill this and will help you to build a stronger foundation of what you learn. And so what I kind of found to be really helpful is to, whenever there are homework assignments, I would typically do them for when it's due, but also just make another sheet, another blank sheet, but just have a few problems sprinkled here and there and build that sheet up as the quarter goes along. And that's just a way as kind of like a study sheet. And eventually before like a week or 2 weeks before in advance of the exams, I would just redo the problems with all of those problem consolidation as a way to really review and practice the material again. And so with that, flashcards can be helpful to in regards to just remembering definitions, equations, conversions, or other information just as the list of acids and bases, molecular shapes, and other chemistry concepts. So this is where Quizlet and other applications that can help with memory retention can really come in handy.
All right, so Bio 20 is also known as dynamic genome, and it can be taken in place of Bio 5A. It's a great way to expose yourself if you are interested in research, as the lab mainly focuses a lot on modern lab techniques. So typically a lot of the midterms are information dense, requiring you to, understand a lot of the concepts in lab, steps to operate certain lab machines, how to set up certain calculations and conversions, and definitions and purposes of certain chemicals you may have used. And the second half of the course is based on an occurring research lab at UCR, which correlates to the final project. And that project is a PowerPoint presentation on a chosen research topic. And again, this is a great way to get some practice in for those interested in research, where you will eventually have to present your research as well. And so here are some study tips for going through this course. There are many YouTube channels, such as Khan Academy, who I've found myself using in many courses throughout my college career. It doesn't even have to be biology, in his name. I've used them a lot in organic chemistry and even in explaining some math problems as well. But again, for this course, he can be very helpful for learning calculations and conversions. Crash Course is a great channel for understanding certain pathways and how maybe proteins synthesize and the roles in our bodies. And let's say you forgot a technique in lab or wanted to get an idea of how an apparatus works before you get to class. YouTube is filled with many scientists performing a demonstration of the experiment. So if you can refer to maybe Thermo Fisher Scientific or other channels on YouTube, that would be a great way to kind of refresh your memory and get an idea of what you may be getting into in a certain lab. And again, to mention Quizlet, it is great for creating flashcards for all the terms that you have to memorize and certain concepts. And you can also use it to play memorization games. And it is a great way to also keep track of the content that you've mastered and what you still need trouble learning. And another plus is that you can add pictures to the flashcards. So that can go hand in hand with maybe an apparatus that you have to identify, or maybe a certain protein that you guys are looking at in class as well.
So with the Biology 5 series, this series is a lot more content based. And so with this, it's just really important to read the text when you identify there's being a concept that you don't understand, or even if you do understand and just want more details on it, it's just essential to do so. Many professors will refer to different diagrams, and because not a lot of topics in the series can be covered really in depth in class, you may find yourself having to cover them on your own time. And so just a little general breakdown of what you can expect in the series. So for the first one, for the 5A, you will come across different processes such as photosynthesis, cellular respiration, glycolysis, and although these may be topics that you may have come across during biology class in high school, it's definitely going to be a lot more in depth into details. And it really helps if you watch animations on YouTube, or as these processes involve certain pathways and certain steps, drawing out the diagrams yourself can be a great tools to test yourself, and to make sure that you're understanding of what exactly is going on in that process. And other ways that you can test yourself is generating statements or making up your own questions by filling in the blanks with certain vocabularies or content information that are pertaining to that topic. For the second section of the series, for 5B, you'll be encountering a lot of phylogenetic trees and evolutionary trends associated with the evolution of species. So with terminologies playing a big part, being able to really distinguish between species is going to be the key and the essential tool for this part of the bio series. And with this, again, taking the advantage of the technology that we have through YouTube and Quizlet is the best tools for studying, because for me personally, I found 5B to be a lot more memorization heavy and more so than just applying. For 5C, for Bio 5C, you'll be encountering Nietzsche's graphical data and trends over the years. And so with this, to get a better idea how to interpret graphs and data and be able to analyze them, again, making the use of YouTube and the resources and the online resources that are available can go quite far in strengthening your understanding with this material. And you may find just reading the book more for this section is to be more helpful, as a lot of what may be presented in lectures are just pictures, and with professors explaining them without much written context. And if you're a person who needs that or who prefers to have words and explanation, then textbook is going to be a great resource for this part of the Bio series. For the lab, for the Bio 5 series, you're going to be given a lot of worksheets to study off of. And so with that, always to refer to them as a study tool for the lab portion, for quizzes, as well as the final exams. And these worksheets, these given worksheets are designed so that it can help you to familiarize with the upcoming experiments and the contents that may be overlapping with the lecture portion of the course. And for the TAs of this classes, they may present and summarize each lab material through a presentation or slides. So if this is the case, do take notes and save it as a future reference for when you are studying for the final. And by doing this each week, little at a time, it will save you a lot of time instead of generating everything and trying to really understanding it at last minute.
All right, so for the math series, many of you will come across the math 6, 7, or 9 series. Some effective study tips include that you can take on for the whole math, for all of the math courses you will come across at UCR is to color code your notes by including a color scheme. It'll make it a lot more easier to identify and look over your notes in the future. An example is to label equations in red, theorems in green, and examples in blue, etc. Um, for myself, I find it very helpful to color code my notes, especially for when I'm referring back to them when I need to study. Um, and I know for math, you will come across tons of equations and theorems, so it'll be helpful for yourself in the future if you take some time, throughout the quarter to make these little changes to your note-taking habits. Next is a one-page study guide or a flashcard. So definitely use this as a way to condense all the information that you need to know. You can section off some key concepts and definitions or equations that are associated with it. And by doing so on a flashcard as well, you can just take them anywhere with you throughout campus and study them. Because it is definitely a lot of information to grasp. So definitely take the time to utilize those flashcards when you have free time in between classes and whatnot to study them. And next is to utilize whiteboards or chalkboards when going over homework problems or going over exam problems, so you don't have to worry about running out of paper. And make sure to, again, review all your quizzes and topics, as they may get repeated again on exams, and it's a nice refresher on maybe what you have learned in the first half of the course if your final exams do end up being um, more holistic um, for the course itself. And lastly, some online resources, specifically include a few YouTube channels. So Patrick JMT, his lectures are around 12 minutes, while for Professor Leonard, they usually last around an hour because they're actual recordings of his lecture at a university. So definitely take your pick on whichever you may prefer. Of course, Professor Leonard's channel will definitely go more in depth with explaining how to go about certain problems. And lastly, Paul's online math notes, which you can find with a simple Google search. They're extremely detailed and he provides tons of practice problems and resources to use online in addition to what he's provided to you. So again, as we've covered, there are tons of online resources that we can refer to as college students, and many of them are free, so we should definitely take advantage of them.
And this slide is just so that we can kind of re-emphasize the different resources that are available to help you in your learning experience to be the best that it can. Although a lot of the classes that you will encounter in CNAS can be challenging, it's definitely is doable. It's doable and you can be successful. And from Khan Academy to different YouTubers such as the Organic Chemistry Tutor in the Crash Course, the Academic Resource Center is by far one of the best recommendations that I can give, just because through the SI sessions and the small group or one-on-one tutoring sessions with peers and upperclassmen that have gone through or have taken the courses and have been successful at those courses, it can really provide you insight on what study tips and how they approach the material that made them successful. And so in that sense, you can tap into their insight and adapt what they learn into your own learning style and become more efficient in learning the material. And definitely, although we've highlighted certain study tips and study skills for specific classes for a specific nature of the courses, to understand that everyone is a different learners. So and all the study skills are transferable with one another. So if you find color coding to be really effective for math, you can adapt that and try it to your chem and bio courses. And being able to kind of recognize the system that works best for you, that is the essential key to really be successful in approaching any other academic courses.
All right, so that pretty much concludes our study skills workshop today. Thank you for joining Jianyu and I. And if you have any questions regarding any of the resources or courses that we have mentioned today, please feel free to email us at cnassscholars at ucr.edu, or even refer to any of us peer mentors as well. We're always open to helping you all out. And yeah, thank you for attending, and we hope you all have a great day.